Good morning. I am Dr. Dan Mingle, family physician, founder and CEO of Mingle Health, and this is Ask Dr. Mingle, the Q&A series for Mingle Health, answering your questions about quality programs and the transition to value-based healthcare. It's great to see you all again. Today, I'm asking the questions. And a quick reminder before we begin, we'd love to hear from you. We encourage you to share with us your questions, your comments, your alternate perspectives. You can post your questions or comments to us on LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever you access these recordings, or email us at hello@minglehealth.com. With us today is Joseph Kirkpatrick, founder and president of KirkpatrickPrice. I had the pleasure of meeting Joseph and his team on the occasion of Mingle's 2024 SOC 2 certification. Welcome, Joseph, to Ask Dr. Mingle.
Hi, Dr. Mingle. Thanks for having me today.
Why don't you start us off today with your company origin story?
Yeah, KirkpatrickPrice was founded in 2005. We were started to focus on service providers. We wanted to help service providers who were serving regulated industries, banking, healthcare, government. And one of the reasons that we wanted to do that is because we had been working in the financial services sector. And as we were auditing banks, we were learning that it was their service providers who were really struggling the most with information security. This was around 2001 when I started learning that banks were one of the first types of businesses that were trying to build security programs, that were putting controls into place to protect against people logging into accounts and stealing money. Everybody was worried about that. But the service providers were lagging behind. And so KirkpatrickPrice was founded in order to help those types of organizations shore up their information security programs to support organizations such as banks and healthcare and government agencies.
Great. And what's the range of organizations that you serve today?
It's interesting. We have clients that are household names, but we've also got clients who have 2 employees. We've got a few clients that just have 2 employees. And so it's funny, sometimes a big organization maybe doesn't even know who they're outsourcing to. You don't realize that the company that's doing data processing for you is 2 people working in their garage. But that's the way of the world today. With cloud computing, lots of people can start a business today and offer very cutting edge technologies and solutions to people out of their home, out of their garage. And so we do have some very small companies as well as household names.
Now, I expect those listening in today are predominantly, if not exclusively, in healthcare. It's going to be practices, from small practices, solo practices perhaps, to very big practices. There's probably some of my competitors as organizations that bring data in, analyze it, and send it out. So why should a company in healthcare industry seek certification?
Well, I think the pursuit of a piece of paper at the end represents something. It shouldn't be for the piece of paper per se, but it should be for what that represents. And, I just got an email today from someone who said, "Hey, can you send us something to frame and put on the wall?" And people want that because it is something that they can point to and say, "We did that." And, that's how we feel about our college degrees and our, industry certifications and things like that. And so people pursue it because it is meaningful. They do want to demonstrate that they have completed something, they have succeeded at something. And building a security program is one of those things that if you don't have a milestone at the end, which is, some type of report that provides that proof to third parties, that, hey, we've done this, and there's an independent authority that is commenting on what we've done. If you don't reach that milestone, sometimes you never get there. People make excuses about, oh, I need to update our policies. We'll get to that someday. We need to check and see if our systems are configured properly. We'll get to that tomorrow. We're too busy with our main business today. And so I think the value of pursuing a certification or an audit report is it's accountability. It's something that kind of gives you those guardrails and it gives you that path to completing something, which is very important these days, and that's cybersecurity and compliance.
Now, I noticed from your website, Joseph, that there's a wide variety of programs that you are participating in, auditing, certifying. We chose to go in the SOC 2 direction. What makes SOC 2 different from SOC 1, HIPAA, and high trust, which I think are some of the other things that a healthcare practice might want to consider?
Well, you do have to know who you're trying to communicate to and what do they care about. So if you're communicating to a publicly traded company, someone who cares about SEC reporting, they're going to ask for a SOC 1 report because that report is about internal control over financial reporting. If you are reporting to a company who has an executive that sits on the advisory committee of high trust, well, they push high trust and they're going to want you to do high trust. And so SOC 2 has been the most generally accepted audit report for service providers. It has been requested by the healthcare industry, the financial services industry, government. It's especially been focused on SaaS providers, software as a service provider, to do a SOC 2. And so it's been a very generally applied framework, but that one is published by the AICPA. They publish standards on not only financial and tax matters, but they also have a trust services framework, and it is an information security and privacy framework. And that's one of the reasons that people would choose SOC 2 is because of where it comes from and who they're communicating with.
And I think finally, for someone who engages you, Kirkpatrick Price, what's the process for SOC 2 certification look like?
When you engage an auditor, you have to find an auditor who has experience with your industry, experience with your technology. Just like on the tax side, if you were hiring someone to audit your financials, you wouldn't want a CPA who had never audited the oil and gas industry if you're in the oil and gas industry. And so, it's important to look at the credentials of the auditor that you're hiring. And so that usually happens at first. People do their due diligence and they enter into that engagement with a CPA firm. And then usually people will first undertake a gap analysis. That's the term that we use at Kirkpatrick Price. Other people might call it readiness. But going through an exercise to understand, okay, are we ready for the audit? What do we have? What do we not have? Looking for those gaps. Usually people have discoveries in documentation. People suffer in the world of documentation. They are usually finding gaps in logging and encryption. Those are kind of the top three that we find that people, when they first undertake this, they do that gap analysis and they identify some problems in that area. And so they go through that readiness phase of trying to find the problems and shore up the problems before the audit starts. But then when the audit does start, the process includes documentation review, looking at the policies and procedures. What does this organization plan to do in an emergency? How does this organization plan to configure their systems? And then there is tests of controls. And those tests can be things like interviews where you're corroborating information with the people who work for the service provider, looking at active configurations and the state of systems. How are they configured? How are they operating? And then reviewing output from things that would prove that 3 months ago, our access control system was functioning. 3 months ago, we were logging events on our network servers and our application servers. And so those kinds of tests are performed in order to corroborate whether or not these things were in place over a period of time and operating effectively.
Thanks, Joseph. I really enjoyed having you with us today. I point out for our listeners that we're having a second session with Joseph look us up for that one, talking specifically about our process and our certification in SOC 2 and implications of that. So join us for that second session. Thanks.
Thank you for having me.